Today we have Dr. Randy Carney, and he will give a talk for us in the SNF special series on career development talks. Um, Dr. Randy Carney is Associate Professor of Biomedical Engineering at the University of California, and he earned his Bachelor's of Science in chemistry from the University of Kansas, followed by a Master of Science from MIT and a Ph.D. from Federal Polytechnic School of Lausanne in Switzerland, where he studied how the structure of nanoparticles' organic coating affects their interaction with cells. After postdoctoral training in biochemistry and molecular medicine at the University of California, Davis Health, he established his own research group in 2018 in the Department of Biomedical Engineering, focused on harnessing nanotechnology for biomedical applications. Currently, he leads a team of young researchers studying extracellular vesicles and their potential to improve cancer detection and treatment. His research explores how EVs can serve as a powerful biomarkers for disease and be engineered for targeted drug delivery. His lab work has recently spun out into a new startup company called illumify Diagnostics that is focused on aspect of spectroscopy based on tests for early detection of cancer in just a small drop of blood. Dr. Carney's contribution has been recognized with several prestigious early career honors, including the National Science Foundation of the U.S. Career Award in 2023, the Shurian Early Career Award from the University of California System-Wide Bioengineering Consortium, the Nanoscale Emerging Investigator Designation, and Dr. Carney was also named Research Scholar by American Cancer Society and a UC Davis Chancellor's Fellow in 2021 this year, 25, sorry, this year. Through his work, Dr. Carney aims to bridge the gap between cutting-edge science and real-world healthcare, developing transactional tools that could one day lead to earlier career cancer detection and more effective personalized treatments. His talk is about how to make the most scientific conference. And today we are moderating this session, Swagatama and me. So the floor is yours, Randy. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Claudia, and all of SNEV, for the invitation and that great introduction. That's awesome. I wish I could talk about my research now after hearing all that. But I wanted to talk to you today about a more professional development aspect of science, which is attending scientific conferences. I think most of us as trainees just were winging it, going to a conference and just playing it by ear and not being intentional necessarily about the opportunity that we have when we travel to meetings. And so I took some time and put together some slides, which really, I hope, will give you a sense of actionability. So I call it like a roadmap. And so I want to talk to you about what you can do in terms of strategic goals for attending a conference, having a pre, during, and post-conference plan, and then how you should be strategizing or how you could be strategizing for networking, actually presenting your science, and then following up afterwards. And really the point at your training, in addition to sharing your work, is to see if you can really maximize this opportunity to travel somewhere and go to a big meeting or conference and leverage that for career advancement and maybe even collaboration opportunities. And I'll sprinkle some of my own conference fails and accidental successes to maybe give you some other anecdotes as well. So I think it's important to start with considering why shouldn't you go to a scientific conference? And I think there's many reasons. First, they're really expensive, and actually covering the cost is typically done by your lab. Sometimes individuals subsidize the travel or something, particularly if it's a meeting that you want to go to, but or if it's a second
Podem
to
questionar
you.
sobre isso, tipo,
Oh, sorry, I think someone came off mute there. Um, and you have to have that discussion with your PI really early in the process. 6, maybe 9 months or even a year before you want to go to a meeting, you should sit down with your PI or whomever is the decision maker in your group and get permission. Talk about why you want to go to a conference. And some of the things I'll share with you today are great tools to actually sit down and have a mature, conversation with your PI about here's what I'm going to get out of this conference, and here's why I think I should go. And waiting till the last minute to do that, or having to cover the conference by yourself, is not preferable. I think a lot of people also feel that being gone for a week or more will put them behind in lab work, but I would argue that that is not a major concern, and probably the type of connections and learning that you'll get if you really maximize the opportunities at a conference will be equal to or greater than the few experiments that you would have gotten done. But it depends on where you're at. Some people are getting really close to finishing up their PhD or postdoc, and you need all that time in the lab. Sometimes at the very beginning, it's really valuable to go to conferences because you learn a lot about the field, and that will inform the experiments that you're going to do or the project that you're developing. I think another aspect of conferences are that they're socially awful and scary, as I have written here, which I think is something to consider. Um, I think some people don't have this issue, but I think most people do, and it's kind of scary, especially when you first sort of show up that day on the first day of the conference, and you maybe don't know anybody, and you're new, and so that could be a pretty big barrier to get over. But once you get over that barrier, it's really good. And also, of course, you'll miss your friends and family. So now I have a young son and pets at home, and my partner, and making the choice to go to from California to Australia or Europe or anywhere for a week is a big, it's a family decision that we have to make and weigh. And some of you have families, or you have other social circles that you don't want to leave. And so all these are reasons why we don't just spend every week of the year at conferences. But there is value from going to one every once in a while. And typically for my trainees, I actually require them to go to a conference in a year to present their work, because you get a lot of practice in presenting your work. You get critical feedback, you learn a lot, you network. And so again, it's all a balance with all of these things. So I asked ChatGPT to generate an image of a side-by-side comparison of current you versus future you in terms of going to a conference. So I think it's worth sitting down and thinking, what is the ideal conference for you? So what would success at a conference look like for you? And again, I think most people just sign up for conferences. You are maybe presenting your work in a poster or a talk, and that's pretty much all you focus on. But before you go to a meeting, you should sit down and think about, what do I want to get out of this meeting in addition to presenting my research? Is it networking? Is it a peer group that I want to meet? Do I want to join SNEV and maybe have a leadership role in SNEV? So I want to interface with those people. Do I want to find a job? Depending on what your goals are at the conference, the amount that you should prepare and what you should do is different. So again, I think the main goal of this talk is to give you permission to be very intentional about going to your next meeting and making a plan. And that difference really is attending versus engaging. So rather than just showing up, sitting there, going back to your hotel room at night, rinse and repeat for the next couple of days, actually, what can you do to engage with the conference agenda, social events, vendors, collaborators, and that's really where you get the value out of these meetings. So I think there's some things you can do strategically. So first, choosing the right conference. Of course, all ICEF conferences are no-brainers. Those are always excellent meetings. But you have to have that conversation with your PI or the decision maker of your group. As I said, you have to see if the money makes sense, if the fit for your research makes sense. And this is at different points in your career as well. When you're just starting out going to a conference, you probably want to go to a more hardcore scientific conference that's covering some of the topics in your field, maybe really specific to your research. So the giant annual ICEF meeting which has typically over 1,000 attendees, is usually pretty good for people getting into the EV field at the beginning. And especially people in our field tend to be maybe the only person in their lab at first that are starting in EVs. So going to a big annual meeting, and just learning about the shape of the field and the sort of edges of the field and grasping what the big pictures are has a lot of value at the beginning. As you uh, get more deep into a research project, you might want to go to specialty meetings, right? So we just had an EVs and immunity meeting, which was really tailored to highly specific questions in immunity. And so if that's your research field, that would be a perfect one. So there's so many conferences, even just in the EV field. There's Gordon research conferences. There's many professional societies all throughout the international community. I bet you can find one in your country or in a nearby country if you're joining internationally. In the US, we have 4 or 5 different major EV meetings per year. So just finding that right fit and that community, the people who are running it, the leadership opportunities you might get to participate in hosting a meeting down the road. These are all things that you want to consider for choosing the right conference. And that's the first step. And then, of course, getting permission and making the plan. Then abstract submission and poster talk. Mostly trainees at the graduate and even postdoc level are giving posters. Um, I would even argue that giving a poster has a lot more value than giving a talk. I think usually people see talks as more prestigious and posters as less prestigious, but even at my stage now where I'm typically giving talks at conferences, I love to give a poster at a conference because I get to engage with people more intimately about the work. They tell you things that they wouldn't say or have the opportunity to say during a 15 or 20 or 30-minute talk. And instead, as you walk them through your research, you get a lot of feedback, ideas. So usually I come away with posters with way more value than a talk, or maybe a couple people come ask you questions afterwards, or maybe start a collaboration. But posters are really great. So it's not always, oh, I'd choose a talk, and then, well, if I don't get a talk, I'll get a poster. Sometimes you want to go for the poster. And another thing to consider is that a lot of these submission windows, again, are 6 or even 9 months before the conference starts, that you need to have a plan together to actually submit. So, for example, the ICEB meeting, which is coming up in April next year in Puerto Rico, the abstracts are already going to be due in January, which is several months in advance. There's also no late breaking abstract this year. So if you haven't heard that and you're planning to apply, be sure to check those dates. Now, as the conference gets closer, I think it's worth to take 30 minutes in your day, in your work day, and sit down and create a goal matrix. So maybe 3 personal goals and 3 professional goals. And I still do this usually on the flight over to wherever conference I'm going to. I like to just take a couple minutes and start to internalize and be intentional about my plan for this meeting. Okay, so I made the decision. I spent the money. I left my family. I have childcare and all my personal stuff figured out. Now I'm flying across the world to go to this meeting. Don't just show up and attend, actually sit and plan. What do I want to get out of this? Do I want to practice my pitch for my research so that when I'm talking to people, I could really effectively just give them, this elevator pitch of 30 seconds of what my research is about? Do I want to get better at presenting this aspect that last time I presented, it didn't really go well? Do I want to connect with a company? Do I want to connect with someone that might be hiring one of my trainees? I went to a conference one time, and one of my goals was literally just to meet another PI because I knew my graduate student wanted to go join their lab for a postdoc. And so I thought, oh, this will be great. If I can meet them in person, I can start to, make a connection, and that'll make it easier for them to reach out later. And that's exactly what happened. Then scouting attendees. So LinkedIn is great. Other social media, wherever you typically engage, usually people will be posting about the meeting in advance. There's also usually apps on your device for the conferences that you can download in advance, and a lot of them have a social media aspect where you can message people through the app. And this is a good way to check that out. So creating your goal matrix and scouting attendees are kind of hand in hand. You kind of want to know who's there, who are you actually going to be talking to, who you have the potential to talk to, and then make your plan around that. Um, then pre-scheduling meetings. So, as I'm getting, I was going to say advanced, but let's just say as I'm getting older, nowadays when I go to conferences, pretty much before I go, my entire schedule, including mornings to night, is booked. So companies reach out, collaborators reach out, individuals reach out, former trainees reach out. I'm usually helping to organize conferences, so I have a lot of responsibilities there. And so if your goal was to come and maybe meet me at a conference, you would have had to email, weeks in advance to get time. And nowadays, I usually try to protect coffee breaks and things. I don't plan anything so that I can be flexible during, or try to have one night free in case something comes up that I want to take advantage of. But just think about, I'm assuming most people here are trainees as being associated with SNEV. Usually, if you want to go and connect with those higher level people, the hirers, the future employers, future mentors, collaborators, reach out beforehand. So looking at the attendees, seeing that they're attending, seeing that they're giving a talk, and sending them a cold email. Hey, I'm so and so. I'm in the EV field. I'm going to ISEV. Maybe it's my first meeting or whatever. Some personal fact about yourself to give a warm introduction. I would love to have a coffee with you, discuss your amazing recent paper, or ask you a couple questions about whatever. So you can do that, and people do that to me all the time. It's usually great. And so if you haven't taken advantage of that, go ahead. Then, of course, the logistics. So don't wait until the last minute to figure out your travel, figure out how you're going to get from the airport to the hotel. Recently we were just in Greece for this meeting, and there was a taxi strike on the last 2 days. And so getting to the airport, you couldn't take a taxi. And because of that, the metro, which gets you out there, was like slammed. It only comes every 30 minutes, and I couldn't even get on the first metro. So I plan to leave like 3 hours early to get back to the airport on time. So you need to look up on the local community that you're going to go, see if there's any disruptions in travel. Most universities and organizations that you're with will have an office that can help you with this sort of thing. They can give you travel alerts, information on the local site. Think about your clothing, what you're going to wear. Most academic conferences are business casual, so you don't want to necessarily be over or underdressed. Of course, your own personal style is your own choice, but if you want to blend in and dress like most of the people, you want to consider that carefully. So giving yourself time to organize all of your personal planning is something that takes time as well. Then, of course, there's the poster printing and slides. So a lot of conferences these days, it's all digital. You have to upload your slides in advance or there. So figure out all that. The worst thing is to go to a meeting and not find the speaker ready room where you're supposed to upload your slides and be really stressed on the morning of your talk. Um, Another little hint about that is that a lot of times, if you are invited to give a talk, the schedule may be more flexible than you realize. So, just my own personal opinion, I typically don't like to present on the first day of a meeting, or the last morning, because on the first day, you haven't really connected with many people yet. A lot of the senior people or people that I might want to be in the room during my talk because I want to connect with them or collaborate with them, they might be arriving late. They might be going to have dinner with a friend or meet up with someone they haven't seen in a year. And they might not be diligently attending every part of the meeting and every part of the day. I always do, because I think if I'm here at the conference, I'm here. And I want to be in talks and meetings as much as possible. So as I'll talk about later, I think you can really think about these meetings like a big marathon and being prepared and ready to engage the whole time. But you can actually, if it's important to you, you can often reach out to the meeting organizers and request a different time. And the worst they say is no, or sometimes it's aligned with a session that's more important than the time. But a lot of times I try to present on the second to last day of the meeting. I think that's the sweet spot of where most people are there, they're engaged. Then the first couple of days of the meeting, you can drive people to your talk. Oh, hey, yeah, I'm talking on Friday, whatever. And that's usually a pretty good idea. So if that's important to you, you can always just ask. Um, yeah, so speaking of not being prepared, I'll share with you one thing that happened to me one time, which is that when I was a postdoc, I went to a meeting and I wanted to take advantage of the local poster printing because I thought it was annoying that I had to carry my poster with me all the way on an international flight. And which is so lame. I should have just carried my poster. And so I saw like, oh, for about the same price as I can print it here or at my university where I was a postdoc, I could just print it there and it'll be ready for me on site. Thought that was great. So this was probably 10 or maybe even 15 years ago. So PDFs and things weren't as technologically capable as they are now. So I sent over my PDF and my poster, but what happened was my fonts didn't get embedded correctly. So when I opened it on my computer, it looked fine. When they opened it, and these are people that are not reading your poster scientifically. It was like a local copy shop that was there. The font, they didn't have the local font, and so all of the characters on my poster, including on my title, looked like webdings, little squares and triangles and like hieroglyphics. And I hung that poster and I stood by it because luckily I had lots of pictures and not very many texts. And it was actually pretty funny and a nice icebreaker, but also pretty embarrassing and lame. And so this is just another symptom of not really being prepared. So what I should have done is quality control, print my poster locally, check to make sure it looks good a week before I need to actually go, and then carry that poster with me and present it. So just another warning to just be prepared. Okay, so there's a couple things that you can do here. Research the agenda, key attendees, we talked about that. Manage your time. A lot of apps now for the conference also have, you're able to schedule which hours you're going to join different meetings. So you can go through and beforehand, maybe again on the flight there or the days leading up to the conference, you can look at all the talks and where you want to go and where you want to be throughout the agenda. At a big meeting like ISEV, there's parallel sessions happening, maybe 4 different sessions, and some of them might be on opposite sides of the meeting venue. And so you have to give yourself time and make a plan. So there's been a couple times where I didn't do that. And all of a sudden I'm in a meeting and I'm in a talk and I'm like, oh, the talk I really wanted to be in is here, or the next one is all the way across, and you have to get up and run across, and or worse, you miss something, or you miss a collaborator's talk or a friend. So just be on top of your time management to do everything that you want to do. Um, Again, we're here with SNEV and ISEV, and I think joining the society for the meeting, in our case, ISEV, and looking for volunteer opportunities is really something awesome that you can do. So SNEV and the larger organization ISEV have tons of roles, especially for trainees. Someone is annotating. Interesting. To actually get involved. And this is a great place to meet people. So I've met future trainees and other collaborators actually just because they were greeting people at the door or they were giving out name badges, including some people here associated with SNEV. So this is a nice opportunity. And sometimes you could even get things covered, partial registration or meals or stuff like that. And then, as I said, prepare your materials early. So once you're there, how to engage fully, treat the conference as a marathon. Like I said, be ready for long days. I think this is really important, and I'll give some more anecdotes later, but I think just being involved from the first morning coffee until the end of the social event on that night, every single day, as much as possible, is just really important. And most of the big connections and values that I've had over the years at conferences that are really memorable happen at these sort of off hours. So I know it's tempting, and some people, you're 10 hours of sleep or whatever. If you don't get that, then the next day is going to be wasted anyway. So of course it's the personal balance of what you have to do. But usually I find that staying as long as possible is great. And that includes attending the social events, the other activities, the lunch and learns with the companies, going around to the vendor hall and interacting with the tables. Position yourself where things are happening because you really never know when that opportunity is going to come or who you're going to meet, who you're going to get introduced to. As I mentioned earlier, advertising your talk or poster ahead of time is good. So one technique I used to do as a trainee that I saw someone else doing was bring business cards with my name on it. And then I would write, Friday, 9:30 a.m. in meeting hall B. and then on like 15 business cards. And as I was going around meeting people, talking to people, if it was appropriate, I would say, oh, hey, I would love for you to come to my talk. I'll be talking about this on Friday. And then they have your information right there, and usually that's a pretty good way to get them to engage. I think also have your note taking app or whatever system you have, notebook ready, and be ready to follow up after the conference, and we'll talk about that too. So in terms of networking, um, it's really personal, and it depends on what kind of person you are. And so I have this broken down into sort of the weak link and connectors. So the weak link is this concept that most people you connect with at a conference, the person standing in front of you at the coffee line that you just kick up a conversation with, they're not going to turn into your best friend, your collaborator, your future mentor, but they might be networked or linked to someone that will be. And so it's a little bit callous and cynical just to think, oh, I'm going to go to the meeting and all I want to do is network with the top person that's going to hire me. And I'm not going to talk to any of these peons or other trainees or anyone around me. Because I think even if you are cynical and you're trying to be intentional and get the most out of it, understanding that anyone you meet can turn into a connection of something that can change your academic career is a powerful concept. Then there's the people that are connectors. Some of you are these people, some of you know these people. It's just a person that has this gravitational field. They know everyone, they know who's who, they're social, they're talking to everyone, and these people can make introductions. And so identifying who these people are and using them as a link is another really great way to meet people. And it's another thing, it's a really valuable thing just to ask people directly what you want. And this took me many years to learn. I use it now all the time for mentors. I will just ask someone that I respect or I want advice from, hey, can you join my mentoring committee? It's an informal group of people. I have you meet once a year on Zoom, or maybe I'll just, email or call. And just formalizing the relationship. And a lot of times people are really flattered by that. And they go, oh my gosh, this person thinks me as a mentor. Of course I'll join. Whereas maybe in the past, I would have been too scared to ask them for that. And so I think this is the same for connectors. So when you find those people, just ask them directly, hey, I noticed that you know this person. When you have a chance, could you introduce me? And you'll find that most people love to, especially those type of people, love to do that. And again, the worst that can happen is they say no, which in my experience doesn't happen. Um, Social events go. Sometimes the social events cost extra money, whatever. Bundle that in with your registration, ask your PI to cover it. The value is not in, your how many drink tickets you get or what the tapas are that they have there, but it's actually a really great opportunity to meet people in an informal setting. People are loosened up, it's fun. And this is really where you get a lot. So I see a lot of trainees think like, oh, the extra $50, I don't want my lab to have to cover that. But I would say if you can, please do it because that's where you really get things. And for those, I think before the meeting, you should really practice your elevator pitch. And an elevator pitch, if you haven't heard it, is like the concept of what if you get on an elevator with someone and you only have a short 30-second ride to the next floor and you want to pitch them something, right? So it's a short few sentences that you can get a lot of information out. And I think you should have two elevator pitches. One, especially as a trainee, one about your current research project. What are you studying? Why is it significant? Why are you passionate about it? What are your goals? You should also have an elevator pitch for yourself. Why are you passionate about this field? Where do you see yourself in this field? What do you want to achieve in this field, or professionally, or outside of the field? And being able to switch between those, maybe blend them together and give a personal and research pitch is a skill that you have to practice to develop. So usually, if I give this talk in person, I'll stop here and we'll take 10 minutes and have people meet in pairs and try their elevator pitch. And it's something that you should do in practice with people in your lab or other professional friends or partners. Honestly, I do this sometimes with my mom because she's not a scientist, and sometimes I bounce ideas off of her because I know if she's not understanding what I'm saying, then it's just not clear. And so it doesn't have to necessarily be a scientist that you're bouncing these off of. Then the other thing is to stay at social events. So I'll tell a quick story, which is that one of my very first meetings in the EV field was at the old American Society for Exosomes and Microvesicles. I believe it was called back then, ASEMV, which I think now is AAEV. And they, when I first went to that meeting, I didn't know anyone. I was the only person in my lab that was doing EV research. And my PI paid for me to go to this meeting. And I mean, I literally haven't met a single person, which is one of the few. Usually, when I go to a conference, at least someone in my lab is there, or someone that I've met before. And so I was pretty nervous. I didn't really know, and I just went to the social event, which was on that first night. And I just started talking to people. It was, I had to get over my normal social anxiety and just start talking and meeting people. And then people started to leave, and I just stayed and talked to more people and stayed and stayed. And before I knew it, it was pretty much me and three other people that were left. It was getting pretty late. And then these three people knew each other and they didn't know me. But they were nice and they said, "Hey, we're going to leave the conference and we're going to go into the town and go get, a last drink of the night. Do you want to come?" I said, "Oh, great. This is awesome." Um, it turned out that those three people, two of them have now been ICEV presidents in the past couple cycles, and other very influential people in the field, including Ken Whitwer, who's one of my mentors and the current president of ICEV. And they were just the last people hanging out that night, and I got to meet them and know them on the very first day of my very first conference. Since then, the amount of opportunities that I got because I knew Ken and he would put me up for positions or invite me to give talks, and the other folks that were there that night have been absolutely instrumental in changing the opportunities that I had to contribute to ICEV and our field. And this is all just getting out of my shell and just staying a bit longer than I normally would have. I was tired. I didn't really see the value right then, but you just never know. And so that's my pitch to stay. So then after the conference, it's not over if you really want to take advantage of it. So there's a couple things that you can do. And first, you can really send follow-up emails very promptly. So within a few days, you might have got business cards from people. You might have seen an excellent talk. You may not even have talked to them in person, but you saw them talk or saw them present or saw that they were there. Send a follow-up email. I really enjoyed your talk. That was great. And again, all these, it's not necessarily that this person will hire you, right? But it'll just be a nice, warm connection that might lead to something in the future or might not. Usually, including personal touches on these is a good idea. Like, "Oh, I remember you spilled your coffee all over my shirt," and that's how we got to me. It's like, "Oh yeah, that person that I spilled my coffee on. Sorry." And then that actually happened to me one time. I spilled my entire coffee on some poor young girl that was coming up to meet with me. It was her very first conference. And I felt pretty bad. And I still keep in touch with her. And every time I see her at ICED meetings, we always get a coffee and laugh. A lot of times these days, people, might take a picture with you and your poster or you. And so sending that over afterwards is a nice personal touch. And then staying connected with social medias and checking in every once in a while is always a good idea. So I have lots of networking contacts that will just, message me on LinkedIn, or if I post something, they'll just keep in touch and expand that network. So there's all these soft things that you can do without being overtly, can you hire me or can you give me a job, to just keep those networks going. So there's some challenges that people feel at conferences. What if you feel nervous or awkward, right? We've all been there. And I would say that's an opportunity to reframe that question and realize that everyone is nervous. I'm nervous every single time I walk into to the first day of a meeting because it's just stressful. And a lot of you know me and you've seen me at conferences, and I probably don't look like I'm nervous, and everyone looks like they know exactly what they're doing, but that's just not the case, right? So this is like the imposter syndrome phenomena. Everyone feels it. Everyone's nervous. And it's important to know that most people aren't there to judge you. They're actually there to connect and teach and learn. So if you just focus on learning, sharing, and connecting with people and not trying to impress people, I think it will go a long way. And also you can practice talking points. So I like to have a couple key phrases that I'll talk about to just make warm introductions. You just memorize those and it just makes it easy to network. That way, in the moment, if you're feeling nervous or overwhelmed, you're not having to think on your feet. You can just fall back on some phrases that you know. So also, it's really easy to get overwhelmed at meetings. There's just so much going on. There's so many people. Some of these meetings are so huge. It's socially exhausting, and it's mentally exhausting. And so I think taking a break is fine. You don't have to be in every single minute of every single thing, or you didn't get your money's worth or something. So actually, sometimes you just need to take a walk, take a break. And again, opportunities come there. So you meet people, you see people that you might not have. I also think if you have that goal matrix beforehand of what you want to accomplish, you can weigh that against key activities. Like, is me skipping this session because I stayed up late last night trying to network and I just need to take a quick nap so I can be on my feet again for this afternoon activity? Maybe that's worth it. Maybe that's not going to sacrifice one of your goals there. It's totally fine. And then, of course, always just finding familiar faces and people that you know is helpful. Um, Also, there's the what if no one visits my poster or comes to my talk. So I think someone at my stage that has been going to conferences for almost 20 years, it happens. I've had literally had multiple you know points in my conference history where not a single person talked to me at my poster, and they just walked right by over and over and over again, and it's a bummer. Afterwards, you're like, why did I even come here? And hopefully you're seeing that the value of a conference is a lot outside of just sharing your research. But it's lame. And there's a couple things you can do. You can advertise beforehand, be proactive, invite people to come to your poster or talk. You can also approach people that are coming by. So I think if you have been to a poster session, you'll know that some people just are very good at pulling you into their poster. So sometimes I don't even walk through the poster session if I don't have time, because I know that I'm going to get drawn into someone's poster. And of course, I want to talk about research in EVs until the sun goes down. And so you can be that person. Just say, as they're walking away, hey, are you interested in this? And this is another way to have elevator pitches about your poster. When you're presenting a poster, you should have like a 10-minute, I'm going through every detail because this person is working on the exact same thing as me. That's rare. You should have probably like a 3-minute overview, starting from the beginning, being able to reset quickly. Two people come up, like it happens all the time. You're talking to someone at your poster that's maybe a weak link, or someone that's just felt like you were standing there and awkwardly and wanted to talk to you. And then that person you're trying to network with or you invited comes by, but you're already halfway through presenting your poster. What should you do? I always think you should pause, welcome the new people in, quickly recap where you are, and then continue on your pitch. So being able to be flexible and know where you're at in your pitch and start over, is a skill that you also have to practice. Then, of course, there's always the people around you. So if the traffic is slow, you have people to your left and right and around you at the poster session. So talk to them about their research and your posters, and that's always a great way. There's, of course, key people over the years that we just happen to have posters next to each other, and I'm still connected with them years later because we just were forced to sit next to each other and we became friends. Okay, so as we finish up here, I'll just go through a couple hanging loose ends. Some of these I covered already, and some of them are just like little pointers and tips, or what I call conference hacks. So yeah, use the conference apps and tools strategically. We mentioned anchor yourself with a few prepared strategic questions. So one that I love is sort of what I call a flattering question. You ask someone, how do you see EVs and immunity evolving over the next few years? This is a great question for anyone at any level. And often I'll ask this to trainees and newer people because it's interesting to see what they say and to give them permission to think about the field that they're part of. It's not just the old geezers that can like decide how the field is going to evolve. We all have a role to play, especially trainees. But for the old geezers, when you ask them, how do you see it evolving? This is a great moment where they can, talk about how much they know and what they think. And in my experience, this question gets anyone talking, because everyone is there because they love what they're researching and they want to talk about it more. You could be a connector, the people we talked about. So some of you might be thinking like, oh, I'm not a connector, but I'll find that person. But you could be. Maybe you're the type of person that is gonna go, be. I'm sort of like an extrovert introvert, where I'm predominantly an introvert, but I can sort of turn it on. And when I'm at a conference or at a meeting or at a talk, I can sort of break through the imposter syndrome and be a social sort of person, even though that is very exhausting. Planning a networking funnel. So this is an interesting concept about high priority contacts, peers and students, and random encounters. So we talked about this throughout the talk, but this is sort of a formal way to think about it. Who are those high priority contacts? The mentors, the collaborators, key luminaries is a better way to say old geezer, or hirers that you're going to have, right? Then you also have peers and students, so people around you that aren't going to hire you, but they're going to be people that you're going to see for the next, however many years at the conferencing or training, or maybe even longer if you stay in the field, as an academic or an industry person. And then those random encounters, treating everything as an opportunity, is important. And also, it's fine just to have an encounter with someone and you don't get anything out of it. I'm not trying to be too cynical about this. So some people actually host meetups. This is, again, not me. I'm not that kind of person necessarily. But a lot of times it's just like, hey, we're all going to go out for dinner tonight. And you get it going. And so a lot of times people don't have plans, and you could be that connector, that person that actually hosts it, especially if you're in your local area, you know the area very well. Usually most people are traveling nationally, internationally, and so having that person to help is really nice. Tracking questions about your work and paying attention. So this is a big one. When people come to your poster, your talk, and they talk to you, you're overwhelmed, you're presenting. Sometimes you forget what they told you. And then later, really the value of those discussions to follow up, adjust your research, think about the critical feedback that they gave you, and then turn that into action items when you get back to the lab. To do that, you need to really track those questions. So when you're at your poster, at your talk, have a way to jot down things quickly so that you don't forget. Maximizing off time. We talked a lot about this. Meeting up with people, sticking around, staying, just being there. Volunteering, we talked about. Yeah, bringing business cards. At my university, we have this reprographics, and anyone can go on and just order some business cards. They cost like 13 cents in US dollar each. So it's pretty reasonable to buy, 50 and have them for your time. For my students, I will cover these with the cost of these with the lab funds. So if you don't have those, look into your local university about how you can get those. It's usually pretty helpful. Leveraging social media, we talked about. So have a follow-up template and personalize it. So you don't have to spend 2 days when you get home crafting emails to all the people you met. You can just have a template and copy paste and send it out. Learning how to work the poster session. So not getting trapped at posters. If you're not presenting and you want to take advantage of that, again, have a plan. Sometimes there might be 1,000 posters at a conference or something like that. You can't go to them all. So knowing which sessions you want to be at, who you want to go to is really important. In my experience, if you don't have a plan in poster sessions, all of a sudden the poster session's over. You didn't really get to walk around. You were just like having snacks and chatting the whole time. So this is another thing to like pay attention to the time, show up and have a plan. Engaging with industry. So later in your career, as you're starting to transfer out of your training role and maybe trying to find a job, the vendor hall becomes a whole different aspect. Maybe earlier you're actually trying to find tools and reagents and things that'll help your research, but later you're trying to find a job. So what's very common is to actually print out your CV, personal statement, have them crisp, nice in a folder, walk around and talk to people and engage with them and say, hey, I don't know if you're hiring, but here's my CV. Just give it to them. You never know. So this is, again, just kind of giving you permission to, if you haven't thought about that or you didn't know you could do that, you can. And a lot of people do this. And there's usually sessions where industry, especially SNEV sessions or other ISEV related sessions, where there's always an industry engagement. So we try to get industry people to come to panels, to come to sessions where you can talk to them about their path, their company. And these are also great things. Hydrate, don't forget water. And then follow the after hours action. So I'm not a fan of bringing my family to conferences. I've tried it before and it sucks. The whole time I'm in the conference, I'm thinking like, oh no, they're like in this, beautiful city that I'd like to experience and I'm not with them and they're having fun and I'm feeling like FOMO. And then when I'm with them, I'm thinking I'm missing out on the conference. And so personally, I just made a decision that for most meetings, the ones I go to and I want to be engaged in the whole time, I just travel by myself and I take it really seriously as if I'm at a job. And of course, I'm in a city. It's a longtime friend that lives there. I'll take a night off and go have dinner with my friend or meet up. But usually I try to do that before or after the meeting, if I'm able. Um, And then, yeah, for the boldest among you, be memorable. So there's some wild people that do crazy things and wear funny costumes and dress up and or have funny things on their poster, like none of their fonts working. That was I wasn't trying to be memorable, but I probably was. And so for some of you, it's okay to do that kind of stuff too. Um, Now, finally, I want to talk about presenting the science. So mostly what we talked about is the social aspects. So I'll just give you a couple key tips. So first is simplifying your message. So this is a sort of style of poster that got popular a few years ago, and I still see it a lot. We tried it in my lab a couple times, where you sort of put a giant key finding in huge font in the middle of your poster to just draw people in, and it works pretty well. And it also, in my experience, has a nice sort of mental social trick where more people come to engage in these type of posters in my experience because it's not a poster crowded with a million panels and words where I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm kind of interested in that title, but if I go talk to this person, that's my next 15 minutes because they're going to walk me through every single panel and read all this text. And I'm like, I don't even want to engage with that. So the simpler your poster can be, I actually think it's better because people say, oh, well, it's interesting. It's probably only going to be a minute to talk to them, so I'll come up and engage. Um, Always think about what you're trying to do to your audience. So I like to think about this as the speaker transforming the audience. So you're not just sharing information, you're trying to get them to change their perception about your research. And this is a powerful way of thinking about how to present your research. You're not just being descriptive, you're actually trying to understand where the audience is starting from, what your message is, and where they'll be at the end of your poster pitch talk. And that's sort of like a core theme of to me effective presentations. Creating eye-catching visuals. So learn how to use Adobe Illustrator, Canva. Don't make your figures in PowerPoint. PowerPoint sucks. And I know this is going to get banked on the internet forever, and I hope that they hear me. So learn how to make good figures. People are drawn to that. Practice and rehearsing. Have your lab mates watch you present and only give you feedback on what your body is doing or how many times you say so I just said that's ironic. Standing tall, being confident, practicing how you're actually talking are things that you have to just practice beforehand. Starting and end with relevance and impact. A lot of people forget that they just dive right into the experiments, but actually starting with why this is important and what's the bigger impact is really what people want out of a quick poster. They don't necessarily care about the detailed methods, right? They want to know, why is this important? What did you find? Then a couple other things. Strategic interactivity. So asking questions during your poster. What do you think about this? I don't know about you, but when I'm standing at a poster, the whole time I'm thinking, okay, what am I going to say at the end of this? Do I have a point I'm going to try to make? Am I just going to thank them? Usually I feel bad if someone pitches me their whole poster and I just go, great job, thanks. So I try to think, oh, maybe there's a question in here I can ask or engage with them. So if the presenter pauses and say, hey, what do you think about that? That's great. That gives me an opportunity to have a dialogue with them. So you can do that. Having fallback phrases for negative feedback. You're always going to get the person that comes up to your poster and just is insanely critical, potentially even mean. You just have to have a plan to engage professionally. Oh, that's a great point. I'll consider that. Thanks. Whatever. Handouts or takeaways. So QR code linking to each poster file. I've seen that commonly. You might put a QR code at the bottom and it takes you to a digital part of your poster, assuming you want to share that stuff online. That's usually pretty nice. Some people have it printed out. Again, you might have your business card. Putting your picture on the poster is pretty good. Sometimes the poster sessions are crowded and it's nice to see the picture of the person and see that they're standing there and go, oh, this is your poster, and have a dialogue with them. Or if they're not there, if you're not at the poster, they'll see, maybe they want to find you and talk to you later so they would know who to approach. And then really practicing your opener, simple pitch and closer. So be ready to give a very short recap, medium and longer, as we talked about earlier. Another thing is getting one idea. Every time I go to a meeting, I want to come away with one scientific idea that I wasn't thinking before. Maybe a new project, maybe a new angle on something we're doing. And I'm really intentional about that. And I always am thinking during the entire meeting, like, what's the one idea I'm going to take away from ICEV 2026? And that's something, again, to be intentional about. And then finally, being critical of other research is great. I would say you should apply that same criticism to your own research. A lot of times it's very easy to go like, oh, that was a bad talk, or that was that they didn't isolate their EVs right, or they're calling them exosomes. But then actually think about how you're presenting your research at that same level of criticism. But don't feel like an imposter. Everyone is there to connect and have fun and feels like their work isn't good enough. Every time I give a poster in my mind, I'm thinking, well, this wasn't the exact work I wanted to present. When I thought of this project 2 years ago, I thought we would be here by now. Everyone feels that way. So just present your work at face value, try to connect and have fun. So, okay, that's my presentation. I'll stop here. I think we have a few minutes for questions if you want to chime in, and thank you all for coming.
Thank you so much for the amazing talk, Dr. Carney. I think this goes beyond the scope of EV field in general and for all participants for every conference. You pretty much covered everything that I could think of. One question I did come up with is how do you jump into ongoing conversations if you want to talk with a group and you have someone that you want to really connect with, but they're again in a group setting? How do you make that bridge and just jump in?
Yeah, that's a really good point. And that's another scary social thing, right? You have to, sometimes you might see two people talking and you're like, this is my moment. I think you just have to break the ice and be awkward. A lot of times I'll just literally walk up to people. There might be already in a conversation. I'll kind of stand there politely. Most people have, if they're in a conversation, they'll have the social, intelligence to sort of pause and go, oh, hi, and you have your name tags and you're like, oh, hi, I'm Randy. Yeah, I saw your, just kind of jump in. I don't want to interrupt, but I just, yeah, I don't have any place to stand or sit, or, having some little question or angle to get in is fine. And usually people, I think it's one of those things you think like the worst is going to happen and they'll ignore you or, or like push you away. But most people will just invite you into their conversation, no problem. And I think that's another thing. If you just get out of your shell and do that on the first day, just start going into that morning saying, I'm not just going to stand in line and wait for my tag. I'm going to say hi to the person around me. And then it just becomes something that you get good at in practice. But yeah, it's awkward.
Yeah, yeah, that definitely is. Also, you mentioned social events. So, is there like an etiquette around social events? Like when is it okay to bring up the science and when maybe one should just focus on socializing? Because a lot of times, some professors or participants, they don't really want to engage in the science part of it, and they just want to probably meet other people. So, how do you balance that?
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I think it's kind of a you know it when you see it thing. I agree that if I'm at the social event, I don't necessarily feel comfortable if someone just comes up to me and immediately is like, pitching their research or something. But then again, I mean, we're there to talk about science, and I'm a nerd. I love EVs. I'll talk about science all the time. So I think it depends on you kind of have to read the situation.
Right.
And I don't know if you guys have watched The Office, but there's a great early episode where they're trying to pitch to the guy at Chili's, and the woman keeps trying to jump in and make the business pitch, and he's like, just hold on, keep being social. The moment will come where you can then get into business and get into science. So I think just having patience, and knowing when the moment is right to say, hey, I'd like to talk to you about rare. What do you think about this? It's just a skill you have to develop in networking.
I see.
But it's not that it's inappropriate. It's totally fine to talk about science at a
Right.
science conference, even if it's at the social event. It's just to what degree, how much, kind of have to read them, right? Are they into this? Are they wanting this? And keeping it simple, releasing the person, not trapping them, those kind of things will all help.
Great. We do have one question from the audience, that is how to engage or attract people on poster during poster presentations. And I think you did cover that, but yeah, if you'd like to take that one.
How to engage people during the poster sessions?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, like I said, it all comes back to kind of just getting out of your shell and being a little more outgoing than you might want to be, inviting people in, saying, hey, would you like to hear about this? Usually people's social awkwardness is such that if you take that first step and say, hey, do you want to learn more about this as they're walking by, it's difficult for them to say no, even if they weren't planning to, right? So you can sort of take advantage of your nervousness, that know that everyone feels that way, and that awkwardness, and try to do that. And some of you, I know I give this talk sometimes, and some people in the audience, they're just naturally confident people that are thinking the whole time, like, what's the big deal? People walk by, you just invite them to talk to your poster, then great. And those are connectors, and those are people that you probably want to help advertise your poster.
Right. Also, sort of in the same line, how technical would you want if someone's presenting a poster to explain their work in a short time? Would you prefer it to be more conversational, or would you prefer it to be more focused on the techniques and just, a little bit mixed with the scientific jargon? So, what's the usual balance in such situation?
I think you should have a really formal pitch where you have a short, maybe literally, if you time yourself and talk for 2 minutes at a poster, it's already a long time. I know 2 minutes seems like it's really fast, but I think that's a pretty good boundary. So I try to train my students to have a 2 minute talk that they go through at a technical detail that you're giving like a professional talk, all the jargon. Um, and of course, it depends if you're at one of these conferences where it's 10,000 people of all different fields. The technical details might not be as important as the impact and the message, as I
Right.
said. But if it's at a hyper tailored, specific, subgroup meeting, then maybe you want to be extremely detailed, but still short. That's
Right.
really the key. And then people will dive into all the details if they're interested. And then you might have this great conversational thing after. But I always, and nowadays when as a more senior researcher, when I go up to a poster, especially for a trainee, I tell them what I want right from the beginning. So I set the expectations. So I say like, oh, maybe can you, in a few minutes, could you tell me about your research? And
Mm.
sort of give them permission to start a pitch, right?
Right.
But being prepared for that is good. And then, of course, some people don't want that and they want a conversational tone. I think that's probably more rare, but being ready to sort of talk about your research in that way is helpful too.
I see. Right. We have one more question, which is how to know which is the right time to approach scientists to discuss about opportunities in their respective labs.
Yeah, I don't know if there's a right or wrong time for that either. I think I've seen it all, and I usually, if I do or don't have opportunities in my lab, I'm never offended or like weirded out if someone comes up to me and just directly asks. Like, so I had someone, at the last ISID meeting that just came up to me and said, "Hey, I noticed that you're in California, and my partner just got a job in California. I'm an EV researcher. I'm looking around for postdoc opportunities. Is there something in your lab?" And we just started talking. It's like, well, not necessarily right now, but that doesn't mean we can't write a fellowship, or what's the timeline? Maybe there's grants coming in or not. So I think everyone in my position as a hirer in academic labs has a rotating timeline of uncertainty that new jobs come, people leave, and then all of a sudden you have a spot, you don't have a spot. Um, so you don't know. And I think, again, getting out of your shell, being bold and just asking and being
Yeah.
direct, sometimes is really valuable. And I, what I don't like is when I feel that I'm being manipulated. I can sort of tell that an ask is coming and they're sort of like trying to, do one thing. And so I appreciate when people just are direct about their intentions however, I will say when people do ask to join my lab or ask if I have a position, and they don't know what my research is and what our recent papers are, then to me it's like an instant turnoff because I get the perception that they just want a position and they're
Yeah.
actually not passionate about the topics that we're studying.
Right.
So if you are going to approach someone for a position in their lab and you're going to have that conversation and you got the courage and you're going to just go ask them, dear God, know about their research and be able to talk about it. And again, that's really flattering. If someone comes up to me and they say, "Hey, I saw your paper in this journal last year and I was really interested in this." It's like, wow, someone was reading our papers. It feels good. So yeah, I think that's a good strategy.
Or maybe in some situations, if you don't really know the work, you can always have an interaction, then take some time and then maybe write an email eventually. So, like fairly quickly,
Absolutely.
that usually works quite well. So, yeah, I think
That's a
that
great
was
point. You don't always, even if you meet someone casually and then later, that was like me with Professor Whitworth. Like I don't even know who he was, and then I go back and Google him, and it's like, whoa,
right.
okay, like yeah.
Okay. Do we have any other questions from the audience? If not, we would probably want to wrap up the session.
Well, thank you guys very much for the opportunity, and hope everyone took a little nugget. And at your next conference, just choose one thing right on your way to the conference. Choose one thing that you want to accomplish, and good luck. And I hope to see you at the next ICEP meeting.
Right. Thank you so much, Dr. Carney. And this was a wonderful talk. And we also hope to see you soon at one of the other ICEP meetings or wherever it is. Great. And with that, I think we'll end the session for today. Thank you, everyone who attended, and for the SNEF participants as well, and for also agreeing to be present for this talk to you as well. So yeah, with that, thank you. And all right.
Guys.